This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity and Business Podcast. Here are 14 stories that we're following this morning. We'll try and work through this quite quickly, so thank you very much for listening. First, futures point mildly up this morning. Now it's actually the markets are open. The markets point mildly up this morning. Several weeks of gains behind us, and people trying to sort of gauge this week what's going to go on with the Fed and interest rates and the data that comes out this week. Second, markets had their best week last week in a long time. God bless for that. Third, the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 are now each up more than 10% year to date, so that's going well. Fourth, the book about Bridgewater Associates and Ray Dalio by Rob Hopeland is very hard to put down. This is an excellent book that gives real insight into Ray Dalio, what they did at Bridgewater Associates, and just fascinating. The book's called The Fund. Fifth, the markets this week are largely waiting for more information and direction from the Fed, so we'll see how that goes. Sixth, one of the things that's on the rise is all cash home sales and purchases. 31% of deals are being done with all cash, and that's a lot due to high mortgage rates and people have some liquidity available. That's the highest that's been in 11 years. Seventh, banks and private equity funds are getting together, particularly those banks that have some trouble to do credit risk transfers. And what happens here is some of the massive PE funds will, for all practical purposes, pay the bank, give them cash to take really a phantom slice of the interest income that that bank has coming in from part of their debt portfolio. So not truly transferring the assets, but they're transferring the credit risk. In some ways, it reminds me of sort of the credit default swaps and things like that. Let's hope this doesn't blow up like it did in 2008, 9, and so forth. Eighth, Apollo Global Management and Intel are looking at building an $11 billion plant in Ireland. Amazing how Intel has fallen and needs outside capital to do whatever it plans to do in business today versus how much it was such a leader for so long. It really became a commodity chip company, which itself is fascinating. Ninth, I'm thrilled to give a keynote talk tomorrow in Orlando at the BOMA International Leasing Meeting on healthcare trends, some real estate trends, and so forth. 10th, and you have to prove nothing, and I'll get back to business in a second, I promise, but my golf game remains horrendous. I think it's my mental game of golf is worse than my physical game, and the impulse control to just stick to the right clubs versus trying to go big is such a problem. 11th, as they often say when evaluating a business or venture, the fajitas still aren't sizzling. When we talk about the fajitas sizzling, one of the things I think about in hiring, in the world of hiring, I remember this experience years ago in our prior law firm, is they would hire big, tall, good-looking men and think that all those people are patrician and are going to be leaders. What I found is you're better off with the Napoleonic types than the tall, broad-shoulders, beautiful men types that often look good in leadership pamphlets but aren't that good. This was back in the day when that was the thing. But people still send their stereotypes that people tend to like hire tall and think they'll be successful and patrician and leaders. And I really am a big fan of what's inside versus how that looks on the outside. 12th, Elon Musk says Warren Buffett should invest in Tesla. The Motley Fool explains why that's likely not to happen. Aside from everything else, Tesla is down 32% year to date. Berkshire's up 15.5% year to date. That's what's going on there. 13th, one of the easiest ways to end up in the doghouse, I understand, is to do independent research on Stormy Daniels, the Trump adversary. I say that jokingly. Stormy Daniels, of course, the famous porn star, and God knows what independent research would look like. 14th, Ken Griffin, one of the wealthiest and most successful hedge fund traders in the world, is doubling down on Amazon. That's fascinating to watch. I mean, Warren Buffett, Ken Griffin, both of them, sort of like, it seem like today's version of E.F. Hutton. When they talk, people listen. Again, P.S., don't hire tall under the stereotype it means competence and leadership. And again, God bless Napoleon. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity Business Podcast. We hope you enjoy this. We'll be back with you with a podcast on healthcare trends that'll be shared on Becker Private Equity and Becker's Healthcare. Thank you for listening.